Today, I'm going to take a little bit of a step back from walkthrough videos, and I'm going to share with you a story of two individuals who at one time worked for a company I hired, and you could take a look at that video up there if you're curious. But what I would do is wait till the end, because in this video, you're going to hear the entire story. They worked for a company that eventually they realized was, I use the word defrauding, but I'd like to say that they just didn't live up to the promises that they promised, not the individuals, but this company. And I met these individuals because they were actually my success coaches for that company. And long story short, they ended up leaving that company when they realized that the team the company built just could not capitalize and could not fulfill the promises they were making. And they are an unbelievable couple. And I got to know them because I was working with them week for week, starting in August of last year, all the way up until probably December of last year. And through the weeks that we were working together, it was basically the first time they were introduced to the SMMA world. They had to learn about the business so they can help create the content that I hired the company to do. The company was absolutely terrible. They realized it. They ended up quitting, not being paid by the company. And now that company has shut down and dealing with a lot of legal issues. But they had no choice. They didn't know what to do to make money, right? They had rent due. They had, bills to pay. And one day they were employed, getting paychecks. The next day they weren't getting paid, and they weren't getting paychecks. And so they had no other choice but to start a business model that they felt good about, that was aligned with their morals. And they ended up starting an SMMA business. I gave them access to our coaching program just because we created such a great relationship through the weeks that we were working together. And so I gave them access to our material and said, hey, listen, I know you're in a tough spot. Go learn this. You've already learned so much in the last couple of weeks just having talked week by week with me to learn how to create organic content around this business. So you guys should be able to start creating money and get those bills paid. And that's exactly what happened. And now we've been working together on other projects as well. It's just a great story to give you guys, my YouTube audience, motivation, right? When things aren't going your way, whether it's this business or any business, it's good to be able to pull motivation from the people that you follow. And I think that this, call it a case study, conversation, off the cuff, whatever it is you want to call it, will bring you inspiration and bring you excitement on what is to come in your future. So please enjoy.
There were some shitty days where it was tempting, but you just know that to go back would almost be worse than to not go back. And there was even a part where my mom was like, hey, I know that you guys are going through this. I just want you to know that, like, if you needed to move back home, it's not, like, we'll be there for you. And the fact that conversation was even happening was like, this feels like what rock bottom could feel like. So we just knew that it had to go up from there. And so when we got that first client, it was $500 a month, but it just felt like the little bit of something that we needed to latch onto.
So I have Alex and Kelsey here. What's going on, guys?
What up?
Hey.
All right. So you guys are what you call yourselves, the Inspired Idiots?
That's right.
Now, so tell me about that name, the Inspired Idiots. Where'd that come from?
So I think we came up with it together, but I feel like I came up with the actual wording because in the way that we see it is that, like, the most successful people in the world generally are entrepreneurs, right? Like Hormozi, Steve Jobs, whoever else, like, they always seem to be entrepreneurs. And any entrepreneur that's ever, like, dared to step out of the whole 9-to-5 stability lifestyle and try something new was at one point just an inspired idiot. Right. Like, they had no idea what they're doing, but they're like, but I have a dream. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like we were bouncing around with names, and then I said Inspired Idiots, and, like, instantly we were both just like, that's it.
100%.
Nice.
And we feel like it's such a good name that we've actually put the time and money into, like, trademark it, because I'm like, I feel very protective of this name. Like, this is ours. I don't know if we needed to do that, but I was like, let's get some legal papers. This is our brand. So
is it Inspired Idiots LLC?
No.
Just the .com, right?
Yeah, it's just the .com, because we already had a corporation set up before.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So we put it under that.
Yeah, we put it under that. Yeah.
And that blog, was built out of what reason? Because I know that, there's a lot of great stuff on that. So
Yeah, I mean, basically, like the blog is really like another attempt at getting better at content itself, but also like kind of the middleman methodology, if you will, of kind of what you help people with. Because at the end of the day, it was just like, it's just funny because you're like, okay, well, there's different tiers of businesses, right? There's obviously like local businesses where it's the barrier to entry is much lower. And if you get really good at it, you can stay in there. But since we've had previous experience with other digital entrepreneurs and stuff, it's like, okay, well, these have really high profit margins. So a customer is very valuable to a lot of these companies.
right.
So that was like kind of the eye-opening thing where we're like, okay, well, Kelsey loves to write. We understand content to a certain degree, right? But we want to get better in that front. And it's more of a long-term asset that like, as we add more blogs and as we build up, we can kind of document different entrepreneurs and the journeys and really the different inspired idiots as we go.
Right.
And that's kind of the goal that we have is like, hey, like, let's just find all these idiots and be like, look, this guy, people thought he was so dumb for doing what he did. And then, he did X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So we're kind of working on that as well on the background.
People always think you're dumb until you start making more in a month than they make in a year. And then you're like,
yeah.
Oh,
I know.
Gotcha.
you would know. Yeah.
Well, just in general, right? Like, I mean, I think that depending on your age, we've all kind of gone down the path of, I think, like side hustle stuff. It's been going on for how many years, but I think more in the sense of like, since the internet came to fruition, there's been so many different ways of, working a 9 to 5 and then being able to also earn money on the side, and it just made things easier to do. But I think during the journey, everybody's telling you you're an idiot. Like everybody, hey, I'm trying this, I'm trying that. You should try this. You should try that. Join this MLM. Join that MLM. Yeah. And then eventually you kind of like burn your name, and like people don't even listen to you anymore. And I think like for me, I've had so many failures with side hustles through the years that I was too embarrassed to even tell anybody what I was doing. And so I think that also ends up happening, because I think in the end, it always comes down to the model. Like, is it possible to actually build a real business with the model, or is this kind of like a fly by night thing?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is lifestyle. I mean, that's kind of like our biggest almost takeaway that we have, is because like different business models work for different kinds of lifestyles you want to live.
Yeah.
Right. So for some people, like they want to travel a lot. Like, I know that's kind of our goal, is to travel a little bit more, just have a little bit more of a dynamic lifestyle. And that works really well, because it's like, oh, if I can just figure out how to like use this Wi-Fi connection and then make money off that, I could be anywhere. And I also don't have to live in an expensive city, which is like a lot of people don't even factor in. It's like, you go to a city that's twice the cost to even just rent a place or buy a place. Now you're paying that. And now you're like, well, it doesn't really make sense to travel. I mean, that was the biggest thing we did. Yeah. Like this last year was like, oh, we have an office space. It's like $900 a month, like everything included. If we just got rid of that, we could just leave for 3 months and it would actually be cheaper. All right, let's do that. We're doing that.
So we did that. We did some major rearranging in our apartment, and we're like, this actually makes so much more sense. Like, the office was awesome, but we just need that degree of separation to have a workspace. And if we could save that money, and then we're going to Thailand this winter for 2 months, because we'd rather do that instead.
Perfect. And so, and by the way, it doesn't matter how much money you make. This is coming from me. Many people may disagree, but like, I moved offices, 5 minutes from here because it was $400 cheaper to move here, a little closer to home, but it was $400.
Yeah.
But then I started thinking about like, well, listen, if this office is, let's say, $1,500 a month, I literally could put an extension on my home and build an office and take $100,000 loan and pay $1,500 a month, except it adds value to the house. So now those are all the things that I start to think about.
Yeah. It was so many things, like not even just the money, but like Alex and I are big on like saving our time resources more than anything. So like, we were like, okay, well, we're looking at the time it takes us to like prep food to then have food at the office. And then if we forget something, that's like, shit, we got to go home. And we're like, we could just eliminate all of that and just like take that mental energy out of it too. Then like, it just made it a no-brainer. And as soon as we moved home, we were like, why are we only doing this now? Yeah. I'm just gonna close this blind because it's blowing my face out.
Yeah, go ahead. All right, burning question. Ready for it? How did we meet?
How did we meet?
I'm gonna let Alex. Yeah. I'm gonna let Alex do that.
I'm smooth. We're good on this. So we met because we have dealt with many digital entrepreneurs before, and through some of these digital entrepreneurs, we had met you. You know, and
You're too
we liked each other. You know, and we're like, hey, this is cool. Yeah. And ultimately, you know, I feel like all three of us, I suppose, believe at some level that if you meet somebody, you like the way that the business is done, then business can always be done, if that makes sense, right? Like
no matter what
there's exactly right. And there's almost like kind of I don't want to say like lifestyle, but like principles, I would say, in terms of how people do business. And and I just feel like for me, it's like, okay, well, if I get along with someone's like viewpoints, not like politically and all this other shit, but just like how you treat people, right? At the end of the day. And the product is good. And I feel like I can add value. Then it's like, oh, okay. Like, well, then let's do that. Right. So you came into basically through another entrepreneur, came into basically some services, trying to help expand your business, you know? And
here we
maybe
are.
It didn't work out there for that specific service, but it's kind of been our mission to, and I mean, we said this a long time ago that like our goal is like to make any kind of time or money that you could have accumulated doing a different strategy, make it up and then, you know, tenfold, because that's just the way that we like to do business. And that's the way that we want to do it. And I personally feel like if my name is going to be associated with something, then I want to make sure that it's good at the end of the day. I don't want people being like, oh yeah, and like sucked, you know? So that's kind of been our mission, and it's been good because we've taken on and learned a lot of things ourselves to also, you know, make that happen.
Yeah, I feel like that was expanding on that. That was probably like the biggest thing that I think both of us took away from that experience was that like if your name is being tied to something that isn't aligned with your business values, then you probably don't want to stay there. And I think that it was kind of the opposite of like, as soon as we met you, because I remember our first meeting with you and immediately we were both like, that guy seems nice. He seems legit. And I just liked, I liked that like very early on, we could just tell that you were the kind of guy that just seemed like you wouldn't screw somebody over to make a dime off them. And I feel like that's a really big thing for us, at least, and the people that we want to align ourselves with professionally is like, it kind of does matter who you associate yourself with. And if you're doing business with a bunch of people that are just screwing people over, eventually people are going to tie that to your name as well. So
yeah.
Kind of why we latched on with you, I guess.
That's right. Well, I mean, listen, you know, the entire story didn't matter. I just was curious of how you were going to explain it. But in the end, you guys worked for somebody who was an entrepreneur, actually had a good name for a for a decently long time. Matter of fact, the reason why I hired that agency to do some of my social work was because he was tied to Russell Brunson. And so like, you know, that tied me to them. And then I met you guys, and you guys were, out of the entire company, were really the kind of the shining stars. And I remember even saying to myself, like, I don't know how long you're going to be there, but it's not going to be that long, because I could already tell through our conversations. And then, you know, I even went through like really like mad about nothing with you guys, but with that company, obviously, because I know you were just employed or contracted by them. And the only really silver lining was, I think, this business relationship that we have been able to forge and move ahead. And I would do it all over again. So I appreciate you guys on that level.
That's so nice, James.
Yay.
Wow. An invoice percentage.
Yeah. But let's go through. So when you moved companies, right, you started to work this business, the agency business. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So basically, just for context, like we've been doing social media work for a while. Me specifically on Instagram, Kelsey doing like social media management, copywriting, that kind of stuff. So when we had learned about the model that you guys were doing, it made sense. And it was like, oh, like that's so funny because I actually started with local businesses. Funny enough, like and like the partner I had at the time, I mean, you know, got me over in the end, but like at 1 month we were making 8,000 a month, and it was like, wow, that's so crazy. Like, oh, this kind of came out of nowhere. You know, because some people just say yes, and then all of a sudden you get a couple yeses, and now that's, you know, a few $1,000s a month. You get them signed on for like, even if you suck, you get them signed on for like usually around 3 months. So like you can get some people, you know, turning there. So the business model like made sense, and we already knew how to run obviously Google ads, Facebook ads, like people understand how to set these things up. But I think the best part of the whole thing was that you guys had used like the full, not only just like the websites, but like, hey, here's the websites, here's the text automations, here's like the emails, here's like the ads you can run. And for me personally, with having experience setting some of these things up, I found that actually the community was probably the biggest thing that's the most underrated, because not only can I go in there and ask people like real time, like obviously there's the live streams, or I could just make a post, but I could also just like look up. Like I did that so much. Like I was like, oh, we're going to do an HVAC campaign. Okay. Like, what do I have to know? HVAC. And then I'd like read for like an hour, just like people's questions, and then people's like responses. And I'd see looms from Jason way back. And I'm like watching those looms, and I'm like understanding. And from those things, you get to pick up like the way you approach business to be not just like a service provider, but ultimately a CEO, and how you should actually like approach these conversations with people. Because sometimes you just come in and you're like nervous, and you're like, oh, I could like help you set this up. But then like when you think about it, you're like, wait, you can't even run a Facebook ad. You need me. Like, what are we doing here? Like, you know, you can't set shit up.
Right. You know nothing.
Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, I'm in the driver's seat. And it took us a little bit to get going. But I mean, when we did, it was easy.
So you've been, I know that you guys came in, what was it like 5 months ago, 4 months ago?
Sometime in late 2022, we actually started, like, we were in like the heavy client outreach phase around Christmas, which in hindsight now is not the best time to be like reaching out to local business owners. So many people are just out of touch.
Yeah.
But we had our first client probably around end of January-ish, and then it kind of just like snowballed a little bit from there.
And so, like, why, like, are you sticking with it? Because I know now, you know, Kelsey, you're doing some other things, and Alex
being a middleman for you guys.
That's right. And Alex, you're.
I mean, ultimately, we've been doing the model we did it for like 3-ish months or so, and we were doing it. The biggest
still kind of are.
We still are like literally texting. Like we have text campaigns going out and all that. The biggest thing, I think, for us,
you have clients now, active clients.
Yeah. Oh, okay. The biggest thing for us in terms of like where we're trying to move is like, okay, like we understand the middleman model. Now, how do we make it so essentially we service the highest quality business we can to drive the most profit? Because while we're doing some of these campaigns, we found it was like hard sometimes to convince certain people to like get us on. And you could even like spreadsheet it out, do the math, do all this, and be like, look, you gave us $200. We just made you 10,000, like off these clients alone. Like over the next few months, you will see this money based on what you said. And they're like, yeah, well, you know, I got to talk to my wife, like $500, man. It's a lot. And it's like, you're a doc. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know? And so you almost have to educate people about business. And honestly, that's the biggest sticking point, is finding people that you can educate about business. But when you find someone who's good at their service and maybe they don't understand the marketing, but like you get numbers and names for them to call, they're pumped. Like those are our best clients, like just OGs, you know, like 20-year veterans and something, and they're like, I don't know, I've never messaged my clients before. And you're like, dude, like, we'll just send a text message out and like,
right, exactly.
And then it just like, we just send it to him, and then he calls them, and it's like, it's that simple.
Some of it is so simple that you like, it works, and then you're like, this feels too simple. There are some services that literally probably took us under an hour to set up, and then generated that business owner like thousands of dollars in revenue. And you're like,
That's the way it is.
We did that. Yeah.
And sometimes you just put the number like for the offer. Like I've been like $22 lawn cut. And then it was like
Easy.
people just like submitting forms and doing it. And then you're like looking and you're like, man, you're not even calling them back. Like, let's go. Like you got to move. Right. So it's really like, because not everyone's good at business, really.
Mhm.
Like, you know, like you have to find people who are good at the service and then also like good at like understanding, wow, the faster I move, the happier people are. Right.
Correct.
And if you can find that person, you can work with them for a long period of time because you become more of a growth partner than like a service provider.
Yes. Growth partner. Perfect way to put it. And that's why, you know, referrals is a very big thing. Because when you do find a business owner like that, most of the time they know other business owners like that.
Mhm.
So like when you get a really, really happy client, like the number one thing you do outside of getting the results would be, now how do I get more names out of this guy? Like who does he know? Because his sphere of influence, and he's so happy with us, then he's going to just, you know, yap like, oh, you got to talk to, you know, Alex and Kelsey. You got to talk to Alex and Kelsey. They've turned my business around, or now, you know, I've done all this stuff, because people like to brag about it, right? They want to believe that, because most businesses have problems with marketing and getting new leads and customers. They want to say, I found the solution. All my friends, you have to go talk to these, because they want to be. It's like a restaurant, right? I mean, you know, when you go and eat amazing food, what's the first thing you do? You're like, yo, you got to go. The drinks there are unbelievable. It's no different.
Yeah, they want that positive association, because if they hook people up with somebody who's going to do really great, then it makes them look good, because they're like, yeah, I hooked you guys up. You know, it's like matchmaking. You want to take credit for it.
Yes, 100%. And so that's like one solution. And the other solution, which is a crazy one, and I've seen it happen, I don't know, at least, you know, just from posts a dozen times. Like for example, our towing campaign, somebody landed a client and the guy had never answered the phone, and he's like, I'm gonna go buy a tow truck and I'm gonna just do it for myself.
Oh
Yeah,
my
like
God.
it's happened. So towing, it's happened. Realtors, like we had 2 people that basically went and got the real estate license and just did the marketing for themselves, because like, these people, what are they complaining about? Like I see the messages, like they don't understand business, they don't understand it's a, you know, people aren't ready to buy in 3 to 6 months, things like that. And so they almost create their own business out of the marketing they were doing for another business, and realizing that that person's an idiot, and not an inspired idiot, just an idiot.
just a straight idiot.
Yeah.
Just a straight idiot.
I feel like that's probably one of like the biggest lessons that I've learned specifically in this business model, is that like, just because somebody's willing to do business with you doesn't mean that they're going to be a good fit for you. Because like Alex said, like we had a landscaping lawn care guy that just like sometimes wouldn't answer the phones, and we're like, okay, well, that's not really going to work. Or we had a podiatrist that just like wasn't really seeing what exactly we were doing for his business and the value. And at the end of the day, ultimately that guy seemed like he was kind of like tire kicking. He didn't really know if he wanted to keep growing. So we're like, yeah, you know what? This probably isn't a good fit for us then, because we want to work with people that actually want to grow. So, you know, just because somebody's willing to throw you money doesn't mean that they're going to be worth the headache of that money at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, 100%. So outside of getting a yes from a business, is also understanding if growth is in their future. Like for example, I got to be careful how I say this, because this person does watch my videos. This person that I know owns a business and only works 3 days a week, and does not want to work any more than 3 days a week at all. Like he's booked those 3 days, or she, and I'm just trying to like veer him off. Now I can't, because I just said it again. But and it's like, I don't want clients on these days, and I want weekends off, and yeah, not cool. Don't want it. You guys now are in a position, right, where, I mean, you may have been even in the other place, but in a position to be more comfortable when it comes to money, and being able to go to Thailand and work from home, or laptop, or rental, whatever it might be. Correct? Am I right about that?
Yeah. I think basically what we continue to aim to do is like fill our schedule up with things that can, like, if they're meetings or whatever, that can earn us money. And then as we scale that, we can then start being like, okay, we have excess cash coming in. Now, how do we leverage that cash to make us money without doing those meetings?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the kind of things that we're doing, like with the blog, like all kinds of things like that, where we're looking at and being like, okay, well, we don't have to get on a meeting to make money here. That's powerful. But if you're just sitting around all day, you know, and you could be, you know, even if you slam in 4 or 5 meetings in there, you know, you could actually just earn a little bit to give you that excess cash to then learn how to leverage it. Right. So that's kind of the stage and the season that we're in right now.
Yeah. I feel like we're also at the point too, where like once you start making a certain amount of income, you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, now how can we like trim the fat here? Like, what are things that we're spending our time on that like we could pay somebody else to do? Like we literally are like giving my mom money to do our grocery shopping and cooking and stuff for us. Cause we're like, you know, between all of those things, it takes like a whole day, and we could be spending that time furthering our business and making, you know, more passive income. And then it makes her feel good because now she's getting some money to like be a mom.
Yeah, we hired her sister for as like an assistant too. So like we have odd jobs or anything like that, like we throw it her way.
Yeah.
And she's like at home with the kids, and she's like, yeah, I get to do something, you know, like contribute. So
we've had like local business clients who, like, we had an HVAC client who had like 20 plus years of business just written in physical books. So we were like, okay, well, the first step here is we need to take those physical books and put them in Excel spreadsheet. We're not going to do that. So we paid my sister like minimum wage, and it gave her, you know, like $800 or something like that at the end of the day. And
yeah,
it was a win-win.
We made a small amount of money off it, just like because we're like, oh, well, we quote them, right? So we'll quote you this much.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. It was pretty minuscule, but it felt good.
I think we pulled out like $100 from that, and we're like, nice.
Yeah.
Let's get some food.
I feel like we're at that point now where it's like, how can we like keep the income coming, but trim out the things that maybe aren't necessarily worth our time, so then we can invest that back into making more income, and it's fun. It's like a game.
Yeah. And that is that. It's the leverage of money and time, right? So, you know, as you make more money, you start to look, like you said, as I'm going to use this money to now free my time. So then I could free my time to now put more time into the business that will increase my income. And then it's the flywheel.
Yeah. Because we were like considering that for a while. We were talking about paying somebody to do like the groceries and the food prep and all that stuff. But we kind of played around with it because we're like, okay, well, if we're going to cut that out, then we need to figure out how we're going to use that time efficiently. So we're not just sitting here dicking around being like, haha, somebody else is doing that for us.
Yeah.
So we kind of figured out how to do that and how to, you know, set ourselves up to make more income between the two of us and just kind of keep going from there. So we're excited to go to Thailand. I mean, it's not for a little while, but we're like, when we go away, it makes it so much easier to enter like a no season where everybody just knows that like they're not going to hang out with you for those 2 months. They're not going to ask things of you. Like, we're kind of at the age now where it seems like every weekend somebody's either turning 30 or getting married or having a baby shower. And it's like the obligations just never stop. But when you're away, you automatically get a pass to just say no to everything.
Somebody who's interested in building an agency, working a 9 to 5, what's your best advice for them?
I feel like for me, there's kind of 3 things that I consider the most. There's time, money, and want. And it comes down to like, which one do you have the most of? Because if you don't have a lot of time and you don't have a lot of money, you know, because if you have a lot of money, you could pay somebody to mentor you directly and streamline it. But if you don't have a lot of time and you don't have a lot of money, then the want really needs to be there. Yes. Like, you need to know what your why is, because that's the thing that's going to drive you to go down to your basement at the end of a 10-hour long day and still put the work in.
Yes.
So if somebody's like, oh, I don't have a lot of time, but I want to get started and I want to do this, it's like, great. Like, why do you want to do it? Because that's the thing that you're going to have to think about every day. Whereas people who come into this and they have a lot of time and they have the want, I feel like those are the people that hit $10,000 in the first month because they have all of those things.
They have all,
I think for my answer, I would even say that with having that job, it actually kind of gives you an advantage because you focus really hard in the 2 hours you have a day to do it.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to think about it a lot. And then like maybe in your off time, you know, look at things and do things. For somebody new, it'd be like, figure out like for this specific business model, especially like figure out what it is you want to do. Like, would you want to talk to people or do you want to like do this tech services? Like which one? Right. And then if you can figure one of those out, okay, cool. Just start talking to businesses, right? Because like if you're doing the tech stuff, you're still gonna have to talk to people if you don't have a partner. And I wouldn't even rely on anybody, to be honest, because you can reach out to people. And if you know what you're talking about, as you talk to more people, you actually get better at talking to more people. It sounds weird, but we started doing this. And like, again, we've been doing digital marketing for a bit. And it was just, you know, it's kind of growing pains. You talk to them and you're like, yeah, we could run these Google ads for you. And, you know, they're trying to get that free pitch, you know, we'll run a free trial. And there's a fine line between sounding like and sounding like you know what you're doing, but you want to earn your business, right? There's like a fine line. And sometimes I'd go a little too far and like being like, oh, like a little not confident. And then, you know, it's kind of like mindset in terms of like what you're bringing to the table. And when you can start talking to people, now you can start escalating the conversations. Now you can actually start prospecting. You can start getting some results. Because realistically, I mean, Kelsey was like going hard on the cold prospecting. I mean, she probably reached out to like 300 people in like a month. Like it was like so many people, and like you get nothing. You're like, fuck.
But that was a really good example of like, I think a lot of people, not even just in this business model, but just in business in general, they overwhelm themselves by psyching themselves out too soon, being like, well, I don't know how to do this. And literally, I think in anything, all you need to do is just do the reps and just stop overthinking it in between. Because the only reason that I got good at reaching out to people and that we started getting to a point where people were getting back to us more was because I emailed like 300, probably I would say even closer to 500 businesses. And I learned like what wording really like triggered angry responses from people, or like how I could tweak the wording to sound like I was being more personable, or like, you know, I learned the Groupon method and then I kind of tweaked it based on what I found worked. And I reached out to like 10 businesses one day using your guys' Groupon method. And I think in that same day, 6 reached back out. And that was my highest ever return on like cold emailing. So I think I made a video about that and I put it in the group. But like, you just have to, if you want to be where somebody else is, you just have to get them to show you how they got there, and then just trust the process and put in the reps and stop psyching yourself out in between being like, well, it worked for him, but what if it doesn't work for me? Like, if you just put in the reps and do it, eventually you're going to do something right. And then you're going to learn from that thing that you did right. You're going to do it right again. And then you're going to keep optimizing as you go. And like, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So like in emails that I have on like follow-up stuff for the model for this business, I think on the bottom it says like reply, you know, reply to this email. I answer all my emails, right? And
That's funny.
I think I said something about fear. Like, what's your biggest fear of starting this business?
Yeah.
And the responses are always the exact same, right? It's money, it's time. But a lot of we get a lot of responses that basically say, I'm afraid to put the time in and it not work. Like that string of words in whatever way you want to put it. I'm afraid it's not going to. And so I think people have a false sense of like what success is. Like, people want it, but you're not willing to put it. Like you said, all right, you emailed 500 businesses, right? Like, think about when you go to work, right? Like, how many emails do you respond to in a given 1 month period? It depends what work you are, but whatever. And so people are willing to put in the time and the massive effort in a $40,000 a year job, but they're not willing to put the time and effort into something that literally 3 clients could pay you $40,000 a year, and you could work 10 hours a week. And it just boggles my mind. But I guess you don't know until you know, right?
Yeah, I think a big part of that too is just like, exactly, you don't know what you don't know. And I think a lot of people assume that making $10,000 a month is something that's so hard that it's beyond their reach until you make $10,000 a month and you're like,
I could do 20.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're like, I was overthinking the shit out of this for so long. But people just feel, and I talk to people all the time. I ask them about their goals and stuff, and people always kind of want to like lowball, and they're like, oh, well, I think that, you know, I'd be really happy if I could have an extra $3,000 a month. And it's like, yeah. Do you feel like that's what you want though? Like, is that all that you want? And then when you start trying to like expand it for them, they're like, well, no, I want like $50,000 a month, but they're like afraid to even admit that they want that because they have this belief in their mind that that's unrealistic for them. And it's because most people are living on like a $4,000 a month salary. So that's kind of like the limits they put on their life. And they're like, well, it's unrealistic for me to expect that I could have more.
Correct.
It's kind of, it's kind of sad.
Yeah, for me, I've always thought like it's really easy to make money online. It won't feel easy in the moment. Like you're going to go through some hard shit. Like the first 2 months ish, 2.5 for us was like, holy fuck, all saying yes. And we got one guy to pay us 500. And we're like, oh my God, it's half a rent. Like, oh, like, like it's never,
there were some dark days.
It's simple, but it doesn't always feel easy. Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is like when you start scaling in terms of like, whether it's the amount of businesses you're doing business with, or it's the quality of the businesses you're doing business with, your growth can be exponential in how you do it. And ultimately, as you go through that journey, some people look at it as a destination, like, oh, what if I put all this time in and then like I don't get that 3,000 a month? But it's like, okay, well, what if you put that time in? What kind of person would you be who did all that stuff? And it's that person that you kind of have to like change who you are to be able to even earn that much money, just to how you think, how you act, the way you make decisions, strategize, and that's why you're saying like, maybe I'll be on those calls too. But we just like hit a point where like, oh, like we just fill our calendar up with bookings. Cool. That works for Kelsey to get like full bookings. Now, if logically, if we were to double our income, we would double the sales calls. Okay, cool. But now, instead of if we double it, what if we just did the model that you teach on you? Like, boom, crazy idea here. You have more profit per customer than the average person. So we do it for you. Now we get the close, plus you get the extra on top for providing the leads. So it's like, oh, that seems like logical. Not only would it double, it might do more than that, right? It could triple. So it's like, oh, that seems like the right option for our skill sets, right? So absolutely.
And so I guess the final, getting to the final, I got maybe two more questions left, is in the midst of both of, well, the chaos that ensued 6 months ago between not, me separately and then you guys, your situation, what made you just say like, I got to go find another, instead of saying I got to go find another job, or not job, or somebody else to work for like Instagram and all that stuff, versus just saying, you know what, I'm gonna run with the model that like now I know so much about because you were like consulting me on the social media stuff with the model. I'm trying to find a way to say it.
Do you want to answer first? Or?
I feel like for us, I mean, I think we'd be lying if we said that there was never a moment where like we had to have that discussion, like to go back, into our not so great days. There was a point where Alex and I were literally like selling our shit to make rent. So if I said that there was never a day where we were talking about like, is one of us going to have to pick up a job here? But I think we both just knew that like that was the absolute last resort, because I think that anybody who has ever left the 9-to-5 life and has ever gone out on their own, especially tasted that first like really big paycheck, you just can't go back. You're like, what am I going to do now? Go back to having to clock in and clock out and making $3,000 a month and having somebody else tell me, no, your vacation request has been denied. Like once you're out of that, you realize how much of a lack of freedom you put up with for so long. And it's just, we just couldn't go back. So for us, I mean, we discussed leaving that other opportunity and we kind of had an exit plan, and it did blow up in our faces a little bit because that person obviously wasn't happy about us leaving.
Yeah.
So that, what happened. But I don't know. I just feel like we both have that drive. We both know the kind of lifestyle that we want to live. And I think that being in it together really helped, because if I had been going through that by myself, I might have caved and like picked up a bartending job. And I don't know if I can speak for you on that, but like there were some shitty days where it was tempting, but you just know that to go back would almost be worse than to not go back. And there was even a part where my mom was like, hey, I know that you guys are, going through this. I just want you to know that like, if you needed to move back home, it's not, like we'll be there for you. And the fact that conversation was even happening was like, this feels like what rock bottom could feel like. So we just knew that it had to go up from there. And so when we got that first client, it was $500 a month, but it just felt like the little bit of something that we needed to latch onto.
Yeah. And for me, like I haven't had a job in like Yeah,
You look like you haven't had a
7 years. You know, yeah, like I'm a degenerate. Like I can't go back. Like no fucking way. Like honestly, I'll walk in every time I've had a job. I've walked in, and then like I start thinking of like improvement and like how we can get better at things. So I can't shut my mouth. Like I'm like, oh, like here's how we can make this better. Here's how. And you know what? You know what a boss doesn't care about? You. And they don't want to hear that. They're trying to just do their job. Right. So like nobody cares. So now I'm like, okay, you don't care about me. I'm on like a losing team. I'm just gonna go get it on a better team. So like now that's like how I thought the decision to do your business model, because like I've been doing Instagram stuff for a while, was like the biggest problem with Instagram clients is how do you make them money is like number one. So being able to work for different people and with other people and talking to other people, I've kind of like boiled it down to like, oh, like you don't make money on Instagram. You use it as a channel, but like you have to provide results of some sort, whether it's content for entertainment or if it's for actual like business results, because there's a lot of business people typically. You have to actually get results. And if you don't, like no one gives what you post. Right. Like you have big problems. And like if you get results for people, you make money, you can actually you can transfer that into Instagram making money. But now I have to find that client to do it on. And I have to actually pick them and be like, oh, like you're making money, like whether it's like day trading or something, you're going to teach other people. You kind of have to do that. And with the local business angle, I was like, well, ultimately, you're helping businesses sell and market their services. The whole point of Instagram is to help someone sell and market their services. And both of them require somebody to be competent in what they're doing, right? It's very hard to sell and market a shitty business because like you might be able to get them something, but guess what? They're going to mess up their own profit. And now you got a problem.
They're going to not answer the phone.
So now you're like, oh man. So really the decision was like, okay, like let's start with these local businesses. Let's see how that goes. Let's get our hands in many other businesses than the ones that we're used to doing. And then it almost like be like take a step back and then learn more about business from more of a holistic approach in terms of like, how do you do sales? How do you market with people? And then go back into the marketplace and provide that value for somebody. Right. And that's basically what we're doing now. Right. Like, okay, like we feel like we can make funny ads. We feel like we can do stuff. Okay, well, helping these local businesses with their $22 long cut offer gave us confidence to now run other ads because you're like, oh, it does actually work. Like people weren't liking this. We just like, you got to like make it, you just got to do the right ad.
Find the right.
Really.
Yeah. You got to find
like
the right
sometimes like we ran one same guy, ran to his website with like a form. So many people went there. Nobody filled the form out. Damn. Yeah. Okay. Let's just pull like a straight up call to action, $22 long cut. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. Oh, okay. There we go. Like, it's just how you position it.
Yeah.
And so now we're like, all right, like, let's just figure out how to do that. And yeah, that's kind of what we're doing now.
I think to take it a step further though, to be honest, James, and this is a compliment to you and your business, I don't know that we would have left that other opportunity if we hadn't crossed paths with you, because like Alex said, what we really want to do in life is just like explore business opportunities and be able to like promote and talk about them and like put our own brand on them and say that we stand behind them. And so with that comes with trying business models and finding ones that you're like, yeah, I love this. I support this. I've tried it myself. It works. And as soon as we met you, we were both like really interested in your business model and your approach to business, because you just come at it from a very like, I know this works. I know this makes sense. You can take it or leave it. Like, you know, I've built this $40 million business off of it. And so we met you and we knew about your business and we were both intrigued by it. And then we were also in this place where we were like, we need to get away from this other opportunity that's not serving us. So it kind of just made sense to make that kind of segue. Transition. Yeah. And obviously we went through a period where, you know, we weren't making money and stuff, but we felt like we already had that next opportunity there. That was what we were looking for. So it was just about taking that leap and being like, okay, well, this kind of seems like that thing that we were hoping this thing was going to be.
Right.
So let's just, let's just take the chance on that, because it already feels like a better option. Just makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I remember even, you know, the first couple of times when we did our weekly calls, you guys were like very intrigued with the model. You're like, wait a minute. Like I knew like, and I remember kind of being almost excited to like explain it to somebody who gave a shit about it, right? Like where they're like, oh my God, like, yeah, like it just, you're like the middleman, you're like the Uber to like, you're connecting customers. But like, yeah, like I've known about it, but I never thought about it that way. And, you know, and I saw like kind of the intrigue in the questions that you were asking, which you needed to know to be able to portray it on social. But there was more than just like, list me the things. It was more like, tell me a little bit about that. How does that work? So wait, this is what you do. And so, yeah, I mean, it only makes sense that we are here today having this case study conversation, whatever you want to call it. But it's been fun since, and I'm excited. So let's plug your blog, because you have some pretty good stuff on it. So where could people go to just kind of read about? Well, tell us a little bit about the blog and what you got going on there, and then I'll drop the link in the description.
Yeah, so the idea with the blog, and again, I think part of the reason why we were so intrigued with your business model was because it's kind of the same philosophy. It's like being the middleman and like helping businesses grow that you actually support. And so that's kind of what the blog idea was, and it's still in its growth phase. Definitely, it's still a work in progress, but it's basically just talking about business opportunities. And so we did a bunch of blogs on your program because we did the program and we had that inside look at it. So there's a bunch of blogs on local marketing vaults. There's just things about entrepreneurship and side hustles. And I don't know. I know you've worked on a lot of the more recent ones, but
you had like a whole like A to Z start, right? Or something you sent me.
Yeah. We put up like a whole guide on like how to actually do this business model.
Yeah.
And we took basically for that specific blog, we took all of the videos that you've been putting out, because you've been putting out a lot of free content, free snapshots, that kind of stuff. And we layered them throughout it. So it was like explaining the business model, the opportunities, how it works, what the services are. And then like under each one, basically you had videos. So it was kind of like hilarious, because we're like, oh, like Dan's putting out all this stuff. And like, we're like looking at your YouTube and we're like, well, this is kind of perfect. And like put it in. Right. So we're really trying to just document some of the best business models that people can start. It's just not like very well known, all these different business models. And with marketing, diving into that world, you see a lot of people and they talk some good shit, but like they never factor in really a lot of times either whether it's the lifestyle or like how the actual business. Because I would say 9 out of 10 people are like, wow, like this student got amazing results. And it's like, yeah, they did. And you did work with them. But it wasn't because of you, though. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like they're messaging everybody on Facebook Messenger or something, but it was really LinkedIn. And you're like, well, it's a small detail that, like, if you change the big fucking deal, you know what I mean? Like, you're actually lying. You're not even telling the truth. And that's how a lot of marketers I found are, and going to events like Funnel Hacking Live and, the ClickFunnels stuff. It's like you suss out who's that person, who's not that person.
Correct.
Because it's kind of pisses you off the amount of people that are like, I made $1 million. And you're like, bro, you're lying though. What the fuck?
Right.
Like
it cost you $950,000 to make $1 million.
Yeah, that's so common too. That was like, everyone's like, oh man, like they're just running ads and then like barely even making it. And
yeah, of course.
Crazy, man. Crazy.
Yeah. That's the marketing world we live in. So so I'm going to end this, but you guys got any last words to, let's just say like people in the SMMA world, right? Like whether they're just starting out or maybe having a little kind of like frustrated with whatever they got going on, or anybody who's looking into it, what would be kind of like because you guys literally just gone through this. Like in the last 6 months, you went from not really knowing anything about this business to jumping ship from from being hired by somebody and doing that to no income, to starting this business kind of like without having a choice, but I needed to choose something. And this seemed like logical and trustworthy and all that stuff. And now you're in the SMMA world, and you're also in the high ticket sales world. What would your best advice be for somebody who is in a position where they're looking into starting SMMA or a local marketing agency?
I think that, in any opportunity really, but even in this one specifically, I think that if the best way to get to where they are is to pay them to teach you. And so there's a lot of people out there today that are just spending a lot of time YouTubing things on how this business model works or trying to figure it out themselves. And you can do that, of course. But I feel like people are realizing more and more that their time is more valuable than their money. And so if you want to streamline that and actually start this and launch it and be having paid clients in the next 2 months instead of 2 years from now, then it makes sense to get serious and invest in making it happen sooner. And I feel like it makes so much sense to me, but some people just don't see that. They're like, well, why would I pay you to show me how to do it? It's like, because I'm going to show you how to do it. Right. So you're not going to have to spend, so you're not going to have to spend the next 2 years watching 2 hours of YouTube videos every day, trying to learn all the things that I could have told you were going to run into.
Correct.
And I think with this business model specifically, if you really think about it, it just makes sense. And that's what I hear from people all the time when I do talk to them on calls, is they're like, yeah, I tried Amazon FBA and it just like ultimately was more complicated than I thought, or I wanted to get into trading, but like it didn't make sense to me. But then people come across a business model like yours, where it's like you are literally being paid to provide marketing services for local businesses that do not understand how to provide these services themselves.
Yep.
Most business owners today are so busy running their business, they don't know how to do things like message old customers to get them to come back, or launch a Facebook ad, or show up higher on Google. So if you just learn how to do those things and you put yourself out there, people will pay you to do it for them. It just makes sense. So if you want to make it happen faster, then find somebody who's been doing it successfully and just get them to show you how they did it. Again, it just makes sense.
Ultimately, for me, I feel like it's just like lifestyle. Like pick what kind of lifestyle you want to live. Because if you get too sunk into a lifestyle you don't like, you're just going to hate yourself. Like why would you live a 6 out of 10 life? Like life's meant to be lived and full of adventure. Just do that. Definitely. I think like find somebody you want to be like, and mirror them, try to get with them, try to add value to them, help their business out to see how it works, or pay them to mentor you because they'll speed you up years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't have faith in yourself because if you don't have no results, right? How could you have any faith in yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And when you pay somebody else, of course, if they're where you want to be, you feel like you can at least put their trust in them. You're like, okay, I don't know if this Facebook ad is going to work.
Yeah.
But here you go. Like, I remember like literally like being like to Kelsey being like, I don't know if this HVAC ad is going to work.
He was so nervous.
I don't think it's going to work. I don't think this one's going to work. And then I played it. And then like, I literally like, I remember I was brushing my teeth and I walked up and I was like, we spent $2 and got him 2 leads. That's ridiculous. How does this work?
So nervous about HVAC. And I think that our HVAC client has become like the success story that I talk about more than any other ones, because it's just so great. But I think what you said kind of speaks to the community aspect too, because if you want to excel in something like social media marketing, then you should surround yourself in a community with people who are excelling it. Right. And I mean, you said it earlier. I feel like if I had to pick the thing about this program that was the most valuable for us, it probably was just that community, because you're surrounded by people that are like, hey guys, I learned this today. You should do it like this. Or like, if you have a question, then you can get 10 other people who are like experts telling you like, oh, actually if you had done it like this, then you probably would have gotten this result.
Right.
Like it's just so valuable to surround yourself with people who are going in the direction that you want to go in.
Yeah. And I'd even add on like saying like, it's going to feel hard, and like, you have to just remind yourself, like, this is what hard feels like.
Correct.
If it was simple, like this little mode, everyone would do it. Like it'd be much easier. I've seen so many, like I've been in the online course world. I've seen so many people, I've seen so many people's excuses. I've seen all this stuff. And it's like, oh, like, did you go through the training? Did you do the things? Yeah. No, it's not really like my vibe. You let the intrusive thoughts win. And now you're like, these thoughts that go through your head, you're like, that is.
Well, I mean, in the end, because what happens is they're going to go from here, then they're going to go somewhere else. And then they're going to realize the last 10 years, I've literally tried 10, 15 different things. And so at some point they say like, if you have problems with everybody, you should start, maybe you should look in the mirror. And it's the same thing with anything. And she's watched you fail for the last 15 years and jump from one thing to another. And never one time have you said, no matter what I do, this is it. And I'm going to make it work. No, you're just like, oh, sorry, I spent another $2,000. Oh, let me jump over here. Now I may be editing this part out. We'll see. But
I think that's important though. That goes back to what I said earlier about like the want has to be there, because if I talk to somebody that's like, oh, I really want to work for myself and make money online and do all these things, but then they're also still in that mindset where they're like blaming the government or all these external factors for why shit hasn't worked out for them. I'm like, okay, you're entitled to your story and whatever, but that usually translates to me that you're not even in a place yet where you're owning your own shit. So until you kind of settle that, then your want is not going to be there for you to make this happen, because you're still in that place where you're blaming external factors instead of realizing like, oh, actually, I guess I was kind of the problem in that scenario. Like, you have to own that and then get your want in line. Otherwise, your goals are just never going to happen for you, no matter what they are.
That's exactly right.
Oh,
Bam. Well, mic drop it right there.
Right.
And normally I end this and then we chat afterward, but I got a live or Wednesday Q&A live, and I got to remain loyal to that. So we will have a discussion after. But guys, as always, it's always fun jumping on with you, even though it's been a while, because my life.